Okay, here we are.
Yep.
Okay, thank you everybody for joining us today. My name is Elise Vernon. I am the gallery director here at Olson-Larsen Galleries.
I'm Susan Watts. I'm the owner.
Mhm. And today we are doing a virtual panel discussion. The first part of the discussion with four of the artists in the show, and then next Sunday we'll do the second part with the other three artists in the show. Um, And we also have the lovely, wonderful Dr. Eulanda Sanders here as a moderator and facilitator for the show or for the talk. Eulanda is founder of Innovation Insights and the Donna R. Danielson Professor in Textiles and Clothing and the Chief Strategist of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Iowa State University. That is a mouthful, Eulanda. Um, so I will hand it over to Yolanda here in a second, but first I want to say that The Female Gaze, again, is our current exhibition. We opened it in the second week of October, and it will run through the end of this month, November 29th. So you still have time to come and see it if you haven't. And we'll be open through, let's see, the day before Thanksgiving, Black Friday, and Small Business Saturdays. You
Yep.
can come by. What else? That's it?
That's it.
Okay. Well then, let's get going.
Elise, thank you for that introduction and for reading that very long title. There are multiple titles, so appreciate it. And thank you for providing the opportunity for me to facilitate this panel this Sunday and next Sunday. It's always a joy to celebrate female artists, and you have curated an amazing exhibit of some preeminent artists here in the Midwest. So I would like for each artist to start off by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit of your background and your artwork in the exhibit. And so we'll give you about 5 to 7 minutes to do that. So we'll start with Luca.
Okay, thank you for being here. And I'm a little bit nervous because I'm kind of the World Web isn't it, you don't know the audience. So, well, um, I'm born in Chile and grew up in Chile and came to United States in 1988. So it's around 37 years that I'm uh, in the state. So I'm both Chilean and American. And I located in Southern Illinois in Carbondale. And after I finished my master's degree, I got a studio space. And since then, I've been working in mainly in making, sometimes do other things, but that's my concentration. And the work that I have in the gallery is a group of photograph mainly that focus on the female. And the work started by a found box of clothing that I find that a mother probably gathered, in a box and keep it while her daughter was growing up. So that's the basis of my plate. I use the clothes as a plate. Of course, I edit and I work the plate as, trying to guess what mark are going to show in the print, try to anticipate when I use the clothes as the garment as a plate. So I ink and then sometimes surprises that some mark that you don't see it is showed when the plate go through the press. and then sometimes added screen print and do the composition of it. And the content is, a reflection of clothing and how clothing carry a lot of meaning, cultural meaning, um, uh, individual meaning, and it's almost a portray sometimes. What we put on is a second skin so close to the body. So I think a lot of aspect could show the print. What I can say, I started by trying to transfer one of my print proof to lithograph to stone, and in the transfer I look at the print in the newsprint and I say, well, that's enough. That's what I wanted. So I didn't continue my process in lithograph, and I start doing the colorgraph directly from the plate to the paper. And that is something that by experience I been improving how much ink you can do. You do a small edition because you cannot the plate, take out the ink. So usually are very small edition, and that's why I started to use the garment as a colorgraph. Right.
That's fabulous. Thank you. Thank you. And we'll talk a little bit more too about in a while about your subject of clothing. And I love how you mentioned the relation to the second skin of the body, because that is important. So thank you for that introduction. Beautiful work. Uh, Next, we will go to Ingrid.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Elise and Susan and Eulanda and my other artists in the group. It's been really a pleasure to be part of this project. I have lived in central Iowa since 1993, when I moved from Los Angeles to start teaching at Iowa State University. And I had a practice as a ceramics sculptor when I was in Los Angeles, and that has followed me through all these years. And primarily, I work with forms that incorporate space. So I would say that the tradition of the vessel is a very strong one in ceramics, and it's one that I'm particularly drawn to myself. So when I got the invitation to be part of this show, The Female Gaze, I started to think about what that meant and what it could mean. And I like to involve other people in my projects because I like the idea of the group mind, and I like having their thoughts or their words to mull over. So I asked friends of mine to send me a sentence that defined for them in a sentence what it means to be a woman. And I told them I would use their sentence and put it into this project. I've been working with Braille for about 20 years as a way to talk about cultural and political and social blindness. And I really love the patterns that Braille forms when it's either drilled into the clay or placed there, because you see right away that there is some sort of structure. If you don't know that it's Braille, you know that there's a structure, there's meaning that's involved in it. As I began to evolve the forms, I was sure from the very beginning that I wanted to work with the idea of a gourd because of its connection to shape, their gourds are symbols of fertility, good luck, prosperity, abundance, among others. And it's also very much connected to the female form. Um, and the culture that we're in regards, I think, the female body as mysterious. Our minds and our bodies and our lived experiences have been the subject of speculation, and they've given rise to myths and efforts to kind of keep us in check, so to speak. And I kind of made the creative leap as I was thinking about how I was going to uh, have viewers have access to what the pieces mean. I made the creative leap to Pandora and the idea of Pandora's box being open, leading to miseries and troubles, just like a woman, I thought. And I wanted to use it as a way to kind of transform the narrative of Pandora. And so I came up with the idea of a pocket that would be part of the structure that was there in the gallery with a card inside that had every person's words in English and in Braille. Last summer, I was reading Hannah Carlson's book, Pockets: An Intimate History of How We Keep Things Close. And when pockets were introduced, maybe about 500 years ago, they weren't included. Women's clothing didn't include pockets. So women had to continue using a bag or a purse for personal items. And that I thought, well, we each need to have a pocket. We need to have many pockets, actually. And the idea too that the pockets could be, or that the postcards that are in the pockets could be taken by viewers coming to the gallery really delighted me because it's something they can take home with them. They can mull over it. They can collect all of them. Uh, there are 12. And it was a way to have a generative gift exchange between myself and maybe people that I won't ever even meet. Um, the women who were included in the project range in age from 24 to 93. And I think I'll kind of wrap it up there and we'll talk more at a later point, but thanks.
Thank you, Ingrid. And I really appreciate your um, interpretation of the female experience, both physically and socially, too, through your work. So thank you for that. Next, we'll have Susan.
Hi. Yeah. Thanks for inviting me. This is so much fun. I'm terrible at Zoom, and I'm in my studio and it works. I'm very excited about all this. Yeah, my work has changed. Well, I will talk a little bit about where I came from. I was originally born in California, so another Californian was just out there. Hi, but we moved when I was 2 to Spain, and I grew up in Madrid and in Zaragoza, Spain. So I say that because my mother used to take us to the Prado. She loved art, and she took us to the Prado most weekends, I have to say. I think it was the outing that I don't know what this was about when I was young, but we spent a lot of time there, and I want to say that probably was a very profound experience for me growing up with my mom because my mom was so interested in work, even though she was not an artist. I think that it really affected who I was and the fact that I ended up when I was in college deciding to become an artist. I went to undergraduate school at UC Berkeley and graduate school at Davis. And like Ingrid, came out here to teach. That's why I'm in Iowa. I took a job at the University of Iowa to teach painting and drawing. So, and I've worked with Olson-Larsen for a while, so it's fun that they keep including me in things. I was going to talk a little bit about, I have, I think, 3 or 4 pieces in the show that are not the large scale painting that are works on paper. And my process is such that I work on paper, on some kind of paper. This is 42 by 32 inch paper. And then I mount it on board. It sort of feels a little bit stretcher bar like the whole thing. It's on a Luan board so that I can attach different objects to them. There's plexiglass attached here that comes off of it. not a lot of different objects, but I'm interested in the sort of notion of collage. My work is very much about collage. I use glassine paper and I work on that. It's transparent. I layer it. All of those things take place in this work. Here, as you can see that image there, there's sort of a stag kind of poking its head in there. I began using these archival prints. I lived in Rome for a while. I taught painting at Tyler School of Art in Rome for a number of years. And right behind me was the Borghese Gardens, which is this extraordinary garden with all this Baroque sculpture, where a lot of Bernini sculptures are. And I used to go there and draw. My students all went there and drew. And I started using these images that I lived around for quite a while. A lot of them showed images. Right here, you see an image of Persephone and Hades. Persephone trying to get away. It's an obvious sort of violent kind of moment, dance between these two. That also a Bernini sculpture that also was very influential, and I drew from it. And my work has tended to be, within the last 5 years, kind of reflective. I have these very simple sort of circular forms that I've been using. And then we kind of hit this era we're in now. I'll just call it what it is, the Trump era. And I feel that there was just so much more sort of violence in our world. And so much friction and just division. And I thought about these sculptures and the enormity of how much they sort of, in a way, have nothing to do with our time, but speak to our time. In the top there, you have Persephone trying to get out of Hades' arms as she's being taken to the underworld. Anyway, I started using these. They seem very much like violence against women, which of course they are in many ways. But they're also, they feel a little bit like sort of the woman sort of dominates in these sort of acts. Anyway, I don't want to go. I know you said 5 minutes on this, but there's another piece here. Oh, I guess that's a detail of that one, right?
Yeah.
Right. That one, you see a dandelion. It's an image I've been using a lot. It's a flower that no one wants. Everyone's trying to get rid of it. It's poisoned all the time. Every time I turn around, I see somebody trying to get rid of their dandelions, and I think they're the most beautiful images. The fragility of them, the bloom itself being this extraordinary just fecund little thing. And anyway, it's something I use a lot image-wise in the work right now. Even though my work's very abstract, obviously it's becoming a little more literal in the more recent work. So yeah, welcome everybody. Thanks for listening.
Susan, thank you for that. And I truly appreciate your use of collage in your work. That's such a representation of the female experience
Oh, yeah,
in the layering there. So thank you for sharing that.
you bet.
So next we'll have Kristen.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Yolanda, and thank you to Elise and Susan. And thanks to all who are here. And I'm happy to be talking with all these fabulous artists. This is really a gift. I'm based in Columbia, Missouri. I earned my BFA from Bowling Green State University in Northwest Ohio, and MFA from University of Nebraska-Lincoln. So I'm really rooted in this sort of Midwestern, greater Midwestern region. And what I studied when I was in school was printmaking and ceramics, and I was really drawn to both of those mediums because of how in a lot of ways how much labor was involved, all the multiple steps, and this indirect way of coming to a mark. And I needed that kind of slowness to get to an image. when I was a kid, I grew up in the Cleveland area and I swam in the Great Lakes and I swam in the public pools around that area. And being in and around water and swimming competitively were really formative experiences. And they continue. It's like what feeds my practice now. As an artist, I make images and objects that are about being in and around swimming pools, and the work that's in the female gaze are these full silhouette paper bathing suits that are made out of handmade Japanese papers, and they use a combination of printmaking, drawing, and sewing. The suits trace back to a time when I was a younger swimmer in a way, and it's like tapping into those early kind of awkward adolescent moments where you suddenly notice yourself from the outside, and it's like I remember like this time when you became like when I became really aware of my own body in relationship to other people's bodies. And as someone who like was, a late bloomer, and I remember just waiting and observing everyone else's body around me mature. And so that's just something that really sits with me and is like, I think kind of the root of where the suits come from. I take a lot of inspiration from women's vintage bathing suits, particularly the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. And those suits like can seem pretty modest now, but in the 20s, that was or before the 20s, it was a bathing dress that was out of heavy, dark material, multiple layers, weighted, and it was designed to stay like opaque and not show any sort of anatomical, like not show any part of the body. So I think that like playing with that is one of the things that I'm interested in. In terms of process, I start with a lot of tiny drawings to begin with, and I work out the color and composition, and then I will make craft paper templates that are to size, and then I will cut out that shape from handmade Japanese papers, and then I print several thin layers of oil-based transparent ink to build up and create kind of these luminous gradients or these color fields, or I'll do trace monotape to get the linear work. And so I'm working on both the front piece and the back piece at the same time. And when the ink's completely dried, then I can sew those two sides together at the side seams, and then I can finish the edges with like this sort of micro fold. And it's a really slow, meticulous, kind of repetitive process that, and like behind me in my studio, I have pieces on the wall that just wait and dry a lot of times. So let's see. So one of the things I like about working with paper or the handmade Japanese papers is like being able to like shift the material. And so I can talk about the idea of a bathing suit, or I can talk about the idea of a garment, rather than it being so much about the bathing suit itself. So that idea of its function to protect and conceal. I also am drawn to how the oil-based ink sinks into the surface of that paper, and there's sort of a skin-like quality that comes to it. And for me, the suits blur the line between like a swimsuit and an underdress, this place between like skin and clothing, presence and absence. They're a way for me to like, I feel like it's like I'm using swimwear as this way to have a conversation about the body.
Great.
Kristen, thank you so much. As someone with the background in fashion and textiles, love your techniques and processes and the historical conversations that you're providing about women's appearance and clothing. So thank you. Oh, these are wonderful introductions to each of our artists. I would like to move into some other questions that I have, but also to our audience. If you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and then we will get to those too, because we want to also recognize any questions that you may have. So the title of the exhibit is The Female Gaze, and each of you did talk a bit about that. How do you in your pieces interpret the concept of the female gaze, and how do you use that to push back against societal expressions about women's roles and bodies and identities? So who would like to start?
Well,
You
I'll
want me
go.
to? Okay.
I'm probably the oldest one, the longest teaching, whatever. Well, I really, see the female gaze predominantly as a term referring to for me in my work, as a perspective of women in the creation of art. Because I don't work representationally per se, although I do use representational images once in a while. Um, I really don't think about it in the sense of, oh, am I projecting this in the work? Am I projecting that as a woman? Am I, all the things that take place, like when you make film and you're thinking that way and all that. But as a strong feminist, I really make work, I think, that projects that regardless of the broad range of issues I work with. No matter how abstract, there is, I think, this kind of serious sort of feminist overtone, which to me becomes what I call the female gaze in my work. Um, but ask someone else. Let's see, and then maybe we'll get it.
I could share a couple of thoughts. It was interesting growing up in a family where gender identity was not a big part of how our family looked at itself. We were people. My parents were very progressive. I would say they were feminists before feminism began. When the feminist movement, first wave feminism, I should say, since I now work with students who are describing themselves as second wave or third wave feminists, whatever that means, it means a lot to them. Uh, and it was a shock to begin to interact in the world outside of my family. And as I got to be older and began to do more work in the art world, to come up against limits and discriminatory kinds of perceptions. Uh, and it took me a little while to wrap my brain around how I was going to navigate that, given that my identity was pretty much shaped. I realized that we are always in a dialogue with ourselves, with our families, with our communities, but also with the culture at large. And I remember reading a wonderful book about spiritualism, women's spiritual discoveries, diving deep and surfacing. And there were just so many different ways that I began to understand and connect to a much larger community, a sororal community that really helped me form a stronger presence for myself as an artist and as a woman. Just a little sidebar, since we're talking a lot about clothing and fashion. I was at a reception in early October, and Amanda Williams, who's this fabulous artist, wore a dress that had this ribbon that went through it in many different layers. They're about 1.5 or 2 inches high, and it said over and over again in black and silver, "The future of art is female. The future of art is female." And I'm like, I need that dress. I would have worn it to the opening if I could have gotten one.
Yeah. Can I just say one thing? I think for me, one of the biggest influences, which I think produce, as I say, this art and feminist in me, Barbara Kruger, Joan Brown. These are faculty I had that taught me when I was young, and both of them were, radical thinkers in so many ways, as feminist and as every aspect of their life and work was important to us as young women. I remember that very well. We have a strong group of young women that went through those programs, and yeah, they were great. Anyway, that's it. I think influence, being a good influence is early on is great in that regards.
I can add in my case that I think to be aware who I am as a growing up, that is the main thing that made me question. I never feel part of any movement, but just being aware. I grew up in a large family, boys and girls, and Latin American, which is more role oriented, masculine and feminine is emphasized much more. And so I didn't have that um, mind, but just by growing up as I in my work, growing is something that is important, or I consider, and I start to discovering that all the stereotype they impose to women, they have to be helper, service, compassion. Man could be compassion too, but I don't know why only woman. So being questioned that and start showing in the work. Um, um, and that the filter of the work by myself, being a woman in the context of cultural, in the society that we live, and it transmute, to the paper, and that the female gaze.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
Thank you, Luca. Kristen, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, I'm listening and I'm taking it in, and the thing that, like, when I hear that phrase, the female gaze, it feels very external to me. It's like something that someone is doing to the work or to me, or I don't know. It's so I don't feel like that's the way I enter my own work. So there's this, in some ways, when I'm like making my work, it feels so internal. And so I feel like there's a bit of a disconnect in that, in those words for me, where, um, like almost like I'm trying to figure out what does that mean, and then I'm starting to, like I think about, like you can think, like I feel like each of the other artists that mention things, it's like different ways to look at it. But then I'm, like there's like another part of me that was thinking about the almost sort of like the business side of things, or like the, like who's looking at my work, the sort of demographic of who looks at my work. And for a while, I used to like kind of keep track of that stuff through Instagram. And it was this weird thing where it was like majority women, these age ranges, like, 80% women look at my work. So that's the other piece that I just thought I'd add, is like, that's kind of almost like strange, odd, yet interesting sort of piece of it.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Because yeah, as we think about the gaze and the female gaze these days, it's also very much on social media and the impact from that. So I really appreciate that too. Oh, wonderful insights. Also, to our audience, just to remind you, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. Uh, Next, I would like for our panelists to speak to how does your work, and you've touched on this some, but if you have anything else that you would like to add about how your work contributes to the broader dialogue about women's representation in art today. Are we represented in art? And
It's a big question, Eulanda. Do we
Who would
want
like to jump in?
Well, one of the things I thought about, I mean, because when you threw that, when I saw that one, I thought, what am I thinking about here? And I thought, well, I guess one of the ways all of us on this panel, we all make work, we all put work out in the world, we all exhibit our work, we probably exhibit it in galleries and museums, so that voice is there. That voice is out there. That's how people see the work. That's how people reflect on, perhaps, our issues in our work, whatever we're working on in terms of issues about, sort of feminist issues, and which obviously we all are thinking about. So to me, that I know it's just a simple little thing, but it's like, yes, our work is out in the world, I think, and that is probably a very important part of having dialogue and being, in this river of all of us sort of thinking about, our time, our place, what we're thinking about, how we live in the world right now as women.
Thank you.
Is that okay? I didn't mean to pop.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Would anyone else like to contribute to that?
I was thinking earlier before the panel started about the role that I have in my day-to-day life as a mentor and as a role model, as an example. When I started teaching, when I started in ceramics, there were very few women on the national level. Betty Woodman was one person that really stood out to me, Viola Fry, people like that. And even when I came in the early and mid 90s, the field of ceramics was very dominated by gentlemen. Sometimes not always so gentle. Uh, and uh, and I think about that not a lot, but it comes up from time to time when somebody will say something to me and I'll realize, oh, that's right, I keep forgetting they're looking at me as a woman who is making this work and doing these exhibitions and being part of the larger world. And that's great. I'm honored by that, but it's something that it gives me a little bit of that twist, which was part of what I enjoyed about asking friends to tell me in their own words what it means to be a woman, so I could sort of shift the gaze from turn it inside a little bit. And uh, I think about, I think that there's untold good that's done by the work that we're doing that we don't know about. People see us, they see strong women, they see incredible work, a range of work, and it's exciting.
Yeah. I was going to add one more thing. I did teach for 39 years full time, at different universities. And you're right. I totally didn't even mention students. I mean, that's it. It's like I was so engaged in working with kids always, grads and undergrads. And for the first time in 3.5 years since I've retired, one of the faculty members here at U of I brought over all of her grad students into the studio the other night, about 17 of them, and they were here for a number of hours. And it just made me feel like, yeah, that's an important part of my life, working with students, for sure. And I'm sure all of you too, if you teach. Yeah.
I get
Chris,
the idea that women always has been doing our work. Is the recognition has been a different level. Many man director of museum and all of that as blocking very important work that now is started to be more aware of. But probably we have been doing always. And today also the domestic craft that women work for so many years becoming to appreciate more, and all the textile and many other craft, very domestic, that today are in museum. So it's a shifted of viewing what I've been doing always, embroideries and stuff like that.
Yeah.
thank you for that. Really appreciate that. And that work is being collected and is in museums and being shown. Um, it's about women and by women. Uh, Kristen, do you have anything that you would like to add?
Well, I think that I guess one needs to be able to like really come out of their own world to like be able to answer that kind of question, or to like think about like how does my work enter into that broader dialogue of like, how um and I guess I'm just in this place in my life where it's like, I'm just like, it's like one day to the next. I've got a young child, I'm kind of in like a sandwich caretaking scenario with a mom who's been ill. And um, that's like I'm loving hearing how other people are answering that. But I think that's just been a tough question for me I'm just gonna be honest. Like, I don't want to like kind of come up with an answer because um, that doesn't feel honest, I guess.
I so appreciate that though, because um, at times when we reflect on our work, we're not thinking about, is it making some large, broad um, impact that's contributing to the dialogue and representation of all women in the world. But what you have just shared too is a reality of women in the world. The caretaking, the giving, but then also making at the same time. And so, thank you for sharing that. Truly appreciate it.
I think that Susan and I also have a slightly different perspective
Yeah.
as kind of an agent of making those or creating those opportunities for women artists. I'm an artist myself, and Susan has been, in the art world for a long time as well. And so it's important for us to create those opportunities and be cognizant of who we're representing, um, and, and all of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it extends to we've had the pleasure of working with young women who have come out of school with art degrees and are kind of trying to figure out what they want to do next, and creating internships here for them. And so I was thinking about that when you all were talking about, we're not teachers, but we try to be mentors.
Yeah.
And that's important for us. I'm speaking for you, but I think I can. That's important for us to know that these incredibly intelligent young women are not only making artwork, but maybe working in the role that we are in the future. So
Thank you for that contribution and also for supporting artists, because there's always the conversation, can you make money as an artist? Should you make money as an artist? Should you make money as a woman artist? Can you support yourself? Is it a business? And that's a whole other panel for the future. So I won't go down that road. But thank you both for your support of of artists. Uh, another question I have, our panelists have such a global experience, lived in, various places throughout the United States and throughout the world. Um, but now are working and practicing in the Midwest. And so, what does it mean to create as a woman in the Midwest currently, and how is that shaping your artwork? And whoever would like to jump in first.
I can jump in, and I'm gonna jump in more in like a content kind of way rather than I think how I was interpreting you asking the question. Like I think about like I make work about water, and I'm here in a landlocked state um, where like the lake that I can access is like a man-made lake, like where they dammed a river to make a lake. Um, I've lived in like I'm some 10 something years ago, I lived in New Mexico, and that was like even more evident where I went to a place that was so like physically dry that it's like almost like it pulled me more strongly into water, into that, like where I'd be like, I'd see a pool and I'd be like, oh, there's a pool. Oh, it's an empty pool. Like, oh, I'm longing for that water. So I think there's almost like this funny thing where it's like, because I don't have access to it, I am trying to make it in my studio. Um, yeah, I don't know. That's sort of my like Midwest, like, the person who's making work about being in like on the beach or um yeah, so
I love it. I love it.
For my part, I can add that coming from Chile, that we have, in one side, a long country, we have the Pacific Ocean, and the other side, we have the Andes. So those two borders, influence you. And when I come to the Midwest, for the first time, I could do an horizon with one line. Right? There was the sky, cornfield, and the horizon is unbelievable because for me, always, when in the mountain, the horizon is up high is different. And well, the ocean, I grew up next to the ocean, but that was the change that I could simplify and probably become abstract too because of those space. I think the space, the work can float in the space. We can have a studio with the space, like in New York, you have little space, but the Midwest offer you that is very helpful for an artist to be able to have a studio with space. And the other thing that became important for me was the tree. The trees replace a little bit what my lack of being by the ocean, because they change, they move, season are, so it become like the ocean, and so the wind go through, and all that I start to appreciating more and more by being Midwest.
It's interesting being in Iowa. When I came here, I had come from New York City just before 9/11. We lived in Lower Manhattan, and so we came here, and I went to the swimming pool because I swim every day at pools, and I went to the swimming pool and outside in Iowa City, and I said kind of openly, there was somebody next to me, "Oh, it's so exciting to be, in the country. I'm in Iowa. I'm no longer in New York City." And the man looked at me and he said, "This is 99% 99.9% cultivated land. There is no nature here. There, and he just went on. He listed all of these things to me. We have no, in New York, you're closer to the wildness, and you're closer to real water, that's not all these things. And I remember being so deflated by it all after that conversation. It really blew my mind. I kept thinking, I'm out of being on Broadway. We lived on Broadway, I'm not in the city, but it's a whole different bent, coming here, actually, one of the things so exciting for me and what I think really nurtures me is that I have a backyard that's huge, that's all falling apart and weird plants, and I grow everything, and the animals are everywhere and they creep into my studio, and it is kind of more natural. It's much more nature than that guy was telling me. Anyway, I'll keep my mouth shut on that.
Kristen, I was thinking as you were talking earlier about when I moved here. It was 1993, and there was an historic flood. And they were measuring the water in terms of acre feet. The Welcome to Ames sign had water 3 or 4 inches up the sign there. And I started saying, who owns the rights to all this water? If we pipe this, we could run it through New Mexico into the Rio Grande. We could make those people in LA very happy. They're like, what is wrong with you? I think like Susan, there was some degree of culture shock moving here. I did grow up in the Midwest more than anywhere else, so I'm very accustomed to the seasons. There's a quality to the light here that even though it doesn't appear directly in the work that I do, it influences how I think and feel. I'm accustomed to the way that the seasons move, and uh, I remember early on, the first year I was here, I had a friend in another department, and she said something about Ames was essentially frictionless. And I
Huh.
went, oh, that's it. Okay. And I thought, well, that's the good news, but it's also the other news because there was a part of me that had gotten used to a certain amount of friction as a vehicle for stimulating my thinking and what I was doing. So it's easy to travel from here. But as time has gone by, I've come to deeply appreciate that relative frictionlessness more and more.
You can always find it out there somewhere, I'm sure.
Oh, heck yes. Oh, heck yes. You just walk into the classroom and there's friction.
Oh, well, thank you. I don't see any questions in the chat yet, but I do have our ending question for our panel is what advice would you give emerging artists who are seeking their own voice through their work?
Kristen's smiling over there. I can see that.
I'll jump in. I think about like the Karita Kent rules
Okay.
and like um I meant to grab them. I mean, I have them on my wall. I meant to grab them so I could like, just read them verbatim. But like the make first, then think. Like get your hands in it, and whether like maybe you can be more systematic about it and be like, okay, every day I'm going to touch something for 5 minutes. I'm gonna pick up a pencil and I'm going to draw for 5 minutes. Or so like I think one of the things is like physically make. And I think that gets harder and harder because younger generations they're like sort of digital exposure is like it's just really influences even their ability with their hands, like how much they even did things with their hands as when they were younger. Um, the other thing I think about is like community. Like
Yeah.
it's so important to have community. And whether that's like physically in the same town as you or like, a lot of the community that I have is like this like from my grad school crew, and we're all spread out everywhere, and we will do like whether it's like a Zoom call or like a text or exchanging images back and forth, just ideas, like that's so important. So like cultivating that community and making, those are that's my 2 cents.
Mhm. I could add in the same line, don't wait until you have the perfect brushes, the perfect ink, just do it. Uh, if we wait to have the studio space, the press and all of that, I started doing, after I graduated, keep using the studio in the university until I could, and then until I could afford for a press. But the work was the one that motivated me to ask for the resources that I didn't have. So just start it whatever you have handy and start doing, as Kristen says.
Yeah, the making of things. Yeah, really. I'm with you, Kristen, with younger students in the digital and all of that. And I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old granddaughters that I'm with a lot. And they have a studio they share together and in their house. And they draw and paint constantly and tear things up and glue them. And the 5 and 3-year-old are phenomenal. I had a group of grad students come through here the other day, and they saw a lot of the 5-year-olds work on the wall, and they said, "God, who made that?" It's 5-year-old, and I realized, they're very young age, just making. I think. I don't know. You have a little one, I guess, Kristen. You probably have him or her in your studio all the time. I think it's kind of it's such a great thing. You know, even better than grads and undergrads, little ones.
I like what Lucas said a lot because Francoise Grossen was doing a workshop some years ago. I was writing about it for Surface Design magazine back when Surface Design existed, and she talked about how you have to just work every day, because when you don't, those doubts and worries creep in, and I see that all the time with myself, with my colleagues, with my friends, but also with students. And even even if all I do is sit and write down my ideas or sketch or something, if I'm really don't have either the time or the ideas flowing, I'm at least not doing something else, not answering email. I'm not worrying about digging out dandelions or something terrible. I'll send them to Susan.
Well,
Yeah.
I do one of the things having taught so long and, giving advice to students, just just have a blast making things. Just get in the thick of it, whatever it is. With if you don't even know, I mean, don't even think about outcome. Just begin messing in stuff, and and just it'll become a ritual. It'll become daily. It'll be what you do. It's how you define yourself. It'll become you. You'll make your own work. So
Oh,
yeah.
that's a wonderful, wonderful way for us to end our conversation. Thank you. Uh, and thank you all for joining us for this inspiring conversation and for spending part of your afternoon exploring the many layers of the female gaze. A heartfelt thanks to our artists, Luca, Ingrid, Susan, and Kristen, for sharing your insights, your stories, and creative processes that bring your work to life. Your perspectives remind us of how powerful art can shape and reshape how we see ourselves and the world around us. We also extend our appreciation to the Olson-Larsen Galleries for curating this exceptional exhibition and for the continued commitment to celebrating Midwestern artists and women's voices in art. So if you enjoyed this discussion, I invite you to join us again next Sunday, November 16th at 2 p.m. for part 2 of our virtual panel, which will feature Barbara, Mary, and Rachel. So of course, if you're in the Des Moines area, I encourage you to visit the gallery in person at 52 5th Street in West Des Moines to experience the female gaze firsthand. The exhibition again runs through November 29th, and admission is free and open to the public. So, on behalf of everyone at the Olson-Larsen Galleries, thank you for being a part of this dialogue. Continue to support the arts, sharing stories, and celebrating creativity in all its forms. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you next Sunday.
Thank you, Eulanda.
Thank you.
You're the best.
Thanks.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Great to hear
This
you
was
all.
too fun.
Thank you.
Great
Thanks
to
for
see
the
you.
opportunity.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.